At a glittering gala where everyone expected him to announce his engagement, the billionaire's heir shocked the world. Instead of choosing the woman his family arranged for him, he walked past the crowd and kissed an ordinary girl who worked the event. That one daring moment would change their lives forever. But before we dive into this dramatic love story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. It is free, quick, and the best way to support our channel. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. I would love to know. The ballroom was glowing with light crystal chandeliers, hanging like frozen stars over the heads of the wealthiest families in the city. Men in sharp suits, women in glittering gowns, photographers flashing nonstop. It was supposed to be a celebration, a formal night where an announcement would change the destiny of two families. The heir to the empire walked in. He was 29. His name here is Adrian Cole. Tall shoulders, straight eyes that carried a storm hidden inside. His father expected him to stand before the microphone and declare his engagement to the daughter of another billionaire family. The deal was sealed long before this night in contracts, in papers and quiet boardroom whispers. But inside, Adrian was breaking. He looked across the sea of faces. Some laughed with champagne in hand. Others whispered, calculating future profits. His father smiled at him, a cold, proud smile that reminded Adrian of the weight pressing on his chest. Marry her tonight, sign the legacy tomorrow. Keep the empire alive. It was simple for everyone except him. His heart was pounding, not with love, not with joy, but with anger and exhaustion. He felt like a pawn in a game older than himself. His mother once told him money without freedom is just another kind of prison. Her words echoed in his mind as he stood under the golden light. The announcer tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, Adrian Cole will share wonderful news. Applause thundered through the hall, but Adrian did not move to the stage. Yet instead his eyes caught something different, something no one else cared to notice. Near the far end of the ballroom, just beyond the velvet ropes, stood a girl. She did not belong here. Her jacket was worn, her shoes scuffed, her hair tied back loosely in her hands, a sketchbook held tight as if it was her shield. She was not part of the glittering show. She was only watching, standing on tiptoe to catch a glimpse of the night she would never belong to. Her name was Lily Hart, 24 years old, surviving the streets, painting faces of the city for a few coins. Right now she looked more nervous than anyone in that glamorous room. Adrian felt the world freeze. He did not know why his eyes went to her or why his chest loosened when he saw her, but something inside told him she was real. No mask, no contract, no business. Just a girl holding a sketchbook, trying to disappear into the crowd. Announcer called again. Adrian, please join us on stage. His father's eyes burned into him. The daughter of the partner family smiled gracefully, ready to play her part. But Adrian turned away from them all and walked straight toward the edge of the crowd. People parted in confusion. What is he doing? Why is he walking that way? Whispers followed him like a trail of smoke. Adrian stopped right in front of the girl. She froze, clutching her sketchbook tighter. Sir, I am sorry. I am not supposed to be here, she stammered. But Adrian did not let her finish. He pulled her forward into the light of the chandeliers. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Cameras flashed madly. Reporters pushed forward. Then, without warning, he kissed her. The room exploded, 1,000 voices rising in disbelief, shock, outrage. The daughter of the other billionaire gasped, her smile breaking into rage. His father slammed a fist on the table. Guests covered their mouths. Whispers turned into shouting. Cameras caught every second. Adrian pulled back his lips near the microphone. This is the woman I love, he declared, his voice steady, but his chest on fire. Not your contracts, not your deals, not your staged romance. Her. The crowd was stunned. Some laughed as if it was a cruel joke. Some booed, shaking their heads. Others clapped nervously, unsure of which side to stand on. But Adrian kept his eyes only on Lily. She was trembling, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do that?" Adrian answered quietly, so only she could hear. "Because you are the only real face in this entire room." The security rushed forward, unsure if they should remove her or protect her. The announcer fumbled, trying to regain control. But the moment was already burned into every phone, every camera, every headline, waiting to hit the morning news. Adrian took her hand and guided her out. Through the stunned crowd, every step felt heavier, every glare sharper, but he did not let go. Reporters shouted questions. Who is she? Where did she come from? Is this your rebellion, Adrian? But he ignored them all outside the ballroom. The night air was cold against their skin. Lily pulled her hand away, her eyes wide. "Do you even realize what you just did? You ruined everything." Adrian laughed bitterly. "No, not ruined, freed. And whether you like it or not, you are part of it now." Shook her head, still holding her sketchbook tight. "I am nothing. I do not belong in your world." But Adrian leaned closer, his voice low and raw. "Neither do I." For the first time in years, Adrian felt alive. Not safe, not secure, not planned, but alive. He had crossed the line. There was no turning back. The legacy, the fortune, the carefully built empire was now in danger. But so was his heart, and for once he did not care. The night stretched ahead, filled with uncertainty, scandal, and fury, waiting to crush them both. Yet as Adrian looked at the frightened girl standing under the streetlights, he felt something stir inside that no wealth, no contract could ever buy in. So the story began with a single reckless kiss. The next morning, the world was burning with headlines. Every newspaper, every screen, every gossip site carried the same photo. The billionaire heir kissing a girl in a torn jacket under the chandeliers. Some called it rebellion. Some called it insanity. Others called it the biggest scandal the Cole family had ever faced inside the mansion. The atmosphere was heavy like thunder, waiting to strike. Adrian sat across from his father at the long dining table. Silence was sharp, only broken by the clink of a silver spoon. Finally, his father spoke, his voice cold and sharp. "Do you even understand what you have done? You humiliated this family in front of every investor, every partner, every enemy. You put our empire at risk." Adrian leaned back in, his chair, eyes dark but calm. "I told you I will not be forced into a marriage built on contracts. I will not marry for your empire." His father slammed the table hard enough to rattle the plates. "Then you will watch everything crumble because of your childish defiance." In the corner, Adrian's stepmother and his sister whispered to each other, their eyes cutting through him with contempt. One mistake, and the vultures are already circling. Meanwhile, Lily sat miles away in a small cafe tucked between old buildings, her sketchbook open on the table, hands trembling around a cheap cup of coffee. She had not slept the whole night. Everywhere she looked, people stared at her phones, lit up with her photo. Strangers pointed, whispering, "Isn't that her? The girl who kissed Adrian Cole?" She pulled her jacket tighter around herself, wishing she could disappear. The bell above the cafe door rang. Adrian walked in, his presence filling the quiet room. Lily's eyes widened. She nearly knocked her cup over. "What are you doing here?" she whispered harshly. "You should be hiding from the chaos you caused." Adrian slid into the seat across from her, ignoring the curious stares of the other customers. "No, I should be here with you." She shook her head, disbelief in her voice. "You do not even know me. You saw me once in a crowd, and now my face is on every screen because of you. Do you think I wanted this?" Adrian leaned closer, his tone softer. "Now, I did not choose you to hurt you. I chose you because you were real. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who was not playing a role." Lily bit her lip, tears threatening to spill. "Real does not pay rent. Real does not take care of my little brother who is sick and waiting in the shelter. You dragged me into a storm I cannot survive." Adrian paused, his expression shifting. "Then let me make you a deal." Her eyes narrowed. "Another contract?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, but different. 6 months. You pretend to be my partner in front of the world. In exchange, I will make Sure, you and your brother are safe. A roof, a doctor, whatever you need. And when it is over, you are free again." The weight of his words settled between them. Lily's heart raced. She wanted to scream, no, walk away, never see him again. But the thought of her brother coughing alone in that shelter made her hesitate. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Promise me, promise you will help him." Adrian nodded firmly. On my name, the cafe felt too small, too loud, too bright. She closed her sketchbook and whispered, "Fine, but do not think for a second that I belong in your world." Adrian allowed himself the faintest smile. "Neither of us belongs in it, Lily." Outside the cafe, the flashes of cameras exploded once again. Reporters had tracked him down. Questions flew in the air like arrows. Who is she, is it? True, you are in love. Is this a rebellion against your father? Adrian shielded Lily with his coat, pulling her through the mob. Into the waiting car, she kept her head down, clutching the sketchbook to her chest, as if it was her last piece of dignity. When the doors closed and the chaos was shut out, Adrian exhaled slowly. From this moment on, their lives were bound together, not by love, not yet, but by a contract. A dangerous, fragile contract, written not on paper but in choices. A kiss that started as rebellion was now turning into something neither of them could predict. The mansion stood like a fortress at the edge of the city gates, taller than most dreams could reach, heavy gates guarded by stone lions and cameras watching every angle. Lily stepped out of the black car, her old sneakers crunching on the gravel. Drive, she clutched her sketchbook tighter, the one thing she refused to let go of. The air smelled too clean, too polished. Nothing like the streets she had known. Nothing like the warm chaos of the shelters and cafes she once drifted through. Adrian walked ahead without hesitation, his stride confident, practiced like someone who had been raised to believe the world would always open for him. She trailed behind, her heart hammering every step. This was not her world. This was a stage, and she was an intruder waiting for the curtains to drop inside the front doors. The hall stretched so wide, it made her dizzy. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Marble floors gleamed under her feet. She almost slipped once, but caught herself just in time. Servants lined the edges, heads bowed, eyes stealing curious glances at the new arrival. Lily could feel their judgment, like invisible hands brushing against her skin. The whispers already started traveling from one corner to the next. She is the girl from the photos. She is the homeless one. This is the scandal. Walking right into the house, Adrian finally stopped, turning to face her, his voice low enough so only she could hear. "Do not let them see fear." She swallowed hard, not sure whether to laugh or cry. "Easy for you to say, you have lived here your whole life." He tilted his head, a rare flicker of empathy in his gaze, and it never felt like home. They were led to the dining room that could seat 30, though only 4 chairs were set. At the long table tonight, his father sat at the head, silent, eyes sharp like blades. Beside him, Adrian's sister, Victoria, sipped wine, her lips curved in the faintest smile, one that promised trouble. And on the other side, his stepmother, adjusted her diamond bracelet, studying Lily as though she were an insect under glass. Dinner began in suffocating silence, the sound of silver against porcelain far louder than any word. Lily tried to copy the way Adrian held his fork, the way he used the small spoon for soup, the way he barely glanced up when someone spoke. But her hands shook, soup spilled a little onto the tablecloth, and she heard Victoria's quiet laugh, like a needle sliding under her skin. She muttered an apology, voice barely audible. The father spoke finally, his tone flat. "So this is the woman who has ruined our reputation overnight." Adrian set his fork down, eyes meeting his father's without flinching. "This is Lily, and she deserves respect." Lily's cheeks burned. Her first instinct was to defend herself, but the weight of all those eyes silenced her. She sat frozen, wishing she could vanish into her chair. Later that night, Adrian found her wandering the garden paths outside the mansion she had slipped away after dinner, needing air, needing distance. He watched her from a few steps away before speaking. You handled it better than I expected." She laughed without humor, her voice raw. "I nearly drowned in soup." Adrian almost smiled, though his eyes carried shadows. "You will get used to it." She shook her head fiercely. "No, I will not get used to being laughed at, stared at, treated like dirt. I did not ask for this. You dragged me here." Adrian's voice softened, surprising even him. "I know, and I am sorry." She blinked, startled by the apology. For a moment, the marble walls and chandeliers and family whispers faded, and she saw not the billionaire's son, but a man carrying weight he could not put down. The night air was cool, stars scattered faintly above the city skyline. She pulled her jacket tighter, the old fabric torn at the edges standing out against the manicured perfection around her. Adrian watched her carefully and said quietly, "Stay strong, Lily. The storm is only beginning." Morning light spilled through the tall glass windows of the mansion, but Lily did not sleep well. She had tossed and turned on silk sheets that felt too heavy, too cold, too unfamiliar. Her body was used to rough mattresses and blankets that never covered enough. This luxury only reminded her she did not belong. When she sat up, she noticed a maid placing fresh flowers in a vase. The maid barely nodded before hurrying out, as though afraid to be seen speaking to Hirsch, wandered down the hallway. Walls lined with paintings older than her entire family, portraits of Whitmores, staring down with cold, painted eyes. Every gaze seemed to whisper, "You are not one of us, you never will beat." Breakfast. The family gathered again, Adrian in his usual calm posture, his father hidden behind a newspaper, Victoria scrolling on her phone, the stepmother adjusting her necklace, as always. When Lily entered, silence fell like a stone into deep water. She sat slowly, trying not to knock over the crystal glass or spill orange juice on the polished table. The father lowered his paper, voice edged with disdain. "The press are still circling like vultures because of that kiss you gave in front of the world." Adrian replied evenly, "Better a scandal of truth than a lie of convenience." Lily's fork froze mid-air. She could feel Victoria's eyes drilling into her. Victoria leaned forward, voice sweet but sharp underneath. "So Lily, tell us, do you plan to turn the mansion into an art gallery for your little sketches? Or maybe an exhibit on survival of the streets?" Her laugh was soft but cruel. Lily's cheeks flamed. She wanted to throw her fork, but she bit down the anger. Adrian cut in, his tone cold. "Enough, Victoria." The rest of the meal passed in brittle silence. Later that afternoon, paparazzi swarmed outside the gates, shouting questions, flashing cameras whenever the car moved in or out. One bold photographer managed to slip through the guards, rushing forward as Lily stepped out for air. He shoved a microphone almost against her face. "Is it true you lived in shelters? Did you target Adrian for money? Are you pregnant already?" Lily froze, heart racing, unable to answer. Suddenly Adrian appeared, his arm sliding firmly around her shoulders. He pulled her close, glaring at the photographer with ice in his eyes. "Back away, or you will regret it." The guard hurried over, dragging the man out, but the damage was done. Lily's breathing came fast, shaky hands gripping her sketchbook like a shield. Adrian guided her back inside, voice steady but softer once the doors shut. "Do not let them break you," she whispered, almost trembling. "They already have." That night she sat in the mansion library, surrounded by towering shelves, her sketchbook open but pencil unmoving. Adrian walked in quietly, his steps softer than usual. He studied her for a moment before speaking. "Why do you draw?" She looked up, confused by the question. "Because it is the only place I feel real," she said. "When I draw, I can breathe, I can remember who I am." He nodded slowly, as though the words struck deeper than she knew. For the first time he confessed something, his voice barely above a whisper. "All my life, I have felt like a puppet strings, pulled by family, by business, by the world watching. I envy your freedom, even if it came with hardship." Their eyes met across the silence, something unspoken forming between them, fragile but undeniable. In that moment, the walls of marble and glass felt less suffocating, because for the first time since she entered this world, Lily was seen not as a scandal, not as a burden, but as herself. The mansion buzzed with preparation for the charity gala chandeliers, polished until they shone like stars, gowns delivered in garment bags lined across the dressing room, shoes glittering like treasure chests waiting to be opened. Lily stood in the middle of it all, frozen, as stylists circled around her, pinning fabric, tugging at her hair, dusting powder across her cheeks. She stared at the reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the girl in the midnight blue gown, her shoulders bare, diamonds at her ears light, catching every movement. Once she might have admired such beauty, now it felt like wearing a costume stolen from someone else's life. Adrian peered in the doorway, dressed in a tailored black suit, the lines sharp, the lights, presence commanding. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at her, his eyes unreadable. Then quietly he spoke. "You will be fine." She nodded, though her heart thudded hard against her ribs. The gala unfolded in a golden ballroom filled with the city's most powerful people, chandeliers burning above tables, spread with crystal and silver. Music floated, violins and cellos blending, while laughter and whispers twisted together. The moment Lily stepped inside, every head turned, eyes raking over her. From head to toe, conversations breaking off, replaced by murmurs. She felt heat crawl up her neck, whispers slicing through the air. "Is that really her, the street girl? How scandalous Adrian brought her here. What a disgrace, she does not belong." Her steps faltered, but Adrian's hand rested at her back, steadying her, guiding her forward, as though daring anyone to speak louder. During dinner, she tried to focus on the delicate plate before her, tiny bites of food that looked more like art than meals. But the voices never stopped floating from every corner, cruel, sharp, disguised as polite gossip. One woman laughed lightly. "She probably thinks caviar is just another kind of soup." The table chuckled. Lily lowered her eyes, wishing the floor would open and swallow her whole later. She slipped away onto the balcony, cool night air rushing against her skin, stars scattered above like scattered hope. She exhaled, shaking, gripping the railing, trying to quiet the storm inside. Then footsteps, heavy, uneven, a drunken businessman swayed into view, eyes gleaming with arrogance. Well, so this is the girl who bewitched Adrian Whitmore," he slurred. "Tell me, how did you manage it? Did you sell your soul, or just your body?" Lily's chest locked in panic. She stepped back, but the man reached out, catching her wrist, his breath thick with alcohol. "Come now, darling, why play the saint when we both know what you are?" Her voice broke as she cried out, "Let me go." Suddenly, Adrian was there, fast, fierce, his hand clamped on the man's arm, his voice a blade. "Touch her again, and I will ruin you." The drunk stammered, face draining of color. Adrian shoved him back hard enough to send him stumbling against the railing. Guards rushed in, dragging the man away, muttering apologies, but Adrian never looked at them, his eyes fixed only on Lily. Her wrist trembled in his hand, but he held it gently, now softer than the rage in his voice moments ago. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though tears burned at the edges of her eyes. "You should not have to endure this," he said lowly. She whispered back, "You should not have to fight for me." He looked at her as if the world itself had disappeared, leaving only the two of them. "But I will," he answered inside the ballroom. Whispers spread quickly about the confrontation, guests buzzing with speculation, but Adrian ignored them all. When he led Lily back into the hall, his hand never left hers, the world watching the two of them together. For the first time, he did not hide it. Not the touch, not the claim, not the choice later. In the quiet of the mansion, he found her sketchbook left open on the library desk, drawings spilling across the pages, lines alive with soul, with story, with truth. He traced one image lightly with his finger, not daring to smudge it. "You are an artist," he said softly. "Not just a girl they gossip about, not a scandal, not a name for the tabloids, but a creator." Lily's eyes widened. No one had ever said it with such weight, such belief in that moment. Something inside her shifted, a fragile thread of belonging, slowly weaving into place. The days after the gala settled like a storm, passing over, though the damage lingered, whispers trailing them in every paper, every headline, every digital screen. Adrian barely spoke about it, but Lily noticed how his jaw tightened whenever reporters shouted questions, whenever cameras flashed, whenever someone dared to mention her name with disdain. He shielded her at every turn, yet she knew. The weight pressed heavy on him too. One evening, long after the staff had retired, the mansion quiet, except for the echo of distant clocks, Lily wandered into the kitchen. She wore one of the borrowed sweater's sleeves, too long, her hair loose, her feet bare on the cold marble floor. She reached for a glass of water, only to find Adrian already there, leaning against the counter, a file still in his hand, suit jacket gone, tie loosened, as though exhaustion finally caught him. For a moment, they stared, neither expecting the other. Could not sleep, she asked softly. He gave a faint smile. I could ask you the same, she shrugged, pouring water into a glass. Sometimes the silence here feels louder than the streets ever did. That caught his attention. He set the file down, watching her with something deeper than curiosity, maybe envy. Silence was never a luxury. For me, he admitted, even in quiet, there were always voices, expectations, rules pounding at my skull. She slid the glass across the counter to him. He accepted it, their fingers brushing barely, but enough to spark warmth in the cold room. For a while, they stood like that, sharing no more words, just breathing the same air. The moment thick but gentle. Over the next days, their rhythm shifted subtly. At breakfast, she dared to laugh when his attempt to make toast resulted in smoke and a startled cough. He stared in disbelief before joining her with laughter that felt rare, unpolished, real. In the garden, she knelt in the dirt, planting flowers, the staff thought beneath her new title, yet Adrian crouched beside her, ruining his tailored pants without hesitation. Why, he asked, hands messy with soil, when I have every luxury I could want? Do I feel peace only when the world is not watching? She smiled softly. Maybe because this is the only place you are allowed to be yourself. He began to notice things about her, the way she chewed on her pencil, when she sketched, the way she hummed songs she thought no one heard, the way she folded her hands when nervous. And she noticed him too, how he lingered near the windows, staring at the horizon as though searching for something, how he always loosened his collar as soon as he was alone, how the weight of his father's voice seemed to bend his shoulders. Even when he stood tall one night, he returned from a meeting, eyes weary, tie hanging loose. She was waiting in the library, sketchbook on her lap. Without a word, he sat beside her, their shoulders brushing close. He looked at the pages filled with drawings of the city, of people, of small forgotten corners. These are beautiful, he murmured, his voice softer than she had ever heard. You see things others overlook. She blushed, whispering, it is all I had when I was out there. My way of keeping the world alive even when I felt invisible. He turned to her, then gazed steady, as though her invisibility was the greatest lie anyone had ever told. You are not invisible, Lily, not to me. Air between them held a fragile tension, one neither of them dared to cross, yet both felt pulling stronger with each passing day. There were no declarations, no dramatic gestures, only the slow, steady weaving of two lives, once far apart, now drawing close. In laughter shared over burnt toast, in whispers exchanged in moonlit halls, in the quiet knowing that, for the first time, neither felt alone. The warmth that grew between them could not hide forever, because outside their fragile cocoon, the world sharpened its knives, ready to cut through whatever bond they had built. Papers kept printing her face, sometimes blurred, sometimes cruelly clear, with headlines calling her a fraud, a fortune hunter, a shadow, dragging down the Whitmore legacy. Inside the mansion, the whispers turned sharper too. Servants hesitated when they passed by, conversations halted when she entered hallways that once felt endless, now felt like a cage. Adrian tried to stand tall, yet his father returned from abroad fiercer than ever. You think this girl belongs here? He thundered across the grand study, his voice echoing against portraits of ancestors draped in onyx, gold and power. You are throwing away decades of empire for a charity case. Adrian did not flinch, his voice calm but unyielding. I am not throwing away Anything, father, I am protecting what matters. His father slammed a hand on the desk contracts, scattering like frightened birds. What matters is our name, our legacy, not some sketchbook dreamer off the street, Lily. Overheard parts of that argument from outside the door, her chest tightening, every word stabbing deeper yet when Adrian found her. Later, he said nothing, only took her hand and led her down the long corridor to the balcony where city lights flickered like restless stars. Do not listen to him, Adrian whispered, the night wind tugging at his shirt, but she looked down at her calloused fingers compared to his smooth, perfect world and wondered how long they could really hold on soon. The attack came not from family lips, but from strangers hired to dig into her past. Tabloids splashed stories of shelters she had stayed in, of nights she had been caught by police for sleeping in train stations, of times she had begged for scraps just to keep her brother fed. Every ugly truth twisted crueler, every photograph angled to shame rather than show her survival. When she entered the dining hall the next morning, silence spread like poisoned forks. Clattered staff stood, frozen eyes filled with judgment. She sat stiff at the long table, her heart pounding. But Adrian broke the silence with his steady voice. If anyone here believes her worth is measured by those pages, then they are not fit to serve in this house. He left the table without touching his food, his hand gently squeezing her shoulder. As he passed, and for the first time, Lily saw the staff bow their heads, not in loyalty, but in fear. Still, the storm outside raged louder. Paparazzi swarmed gates, throwing cruel questions. How much did he pay you? Did you sell yourself for a mansion bed? Are you carrying his heir already? She pushed through cameras, her breath shaking, until Adrian pulled her inside his arms, a wall between her and the world. She felt the tremor in his chest, though his voice remained calm. They will not break you, Lily, I will not let them. That night, she found him in his office, head bowed over documents, torn in frustration. He looked up, eyes raw. They want me to end this. They want me to sign her away, as if you are some business deal gone wrong. His hand slammed against the desk, not in anger at her, but in rage at the chains his family kept tightening. But I will not. I would rather lose every penny than lose you. Lily stood in the doorway trembling, because for the first time she realized his fight was not about rebellion anymore. It was about her, about them. And that terrified her, because love was more dangerous than any contract. The morning of the press conference, the sky itself felt heavy, gray clouds rolling over the city like a warning. Lily stood behind the curtain of the ballroom turned media hall, her hands trembling around the edge of her simple dress, her sketchbook tucked away in her bag like a secret shield. Cameras clicked already, even though Adrian had not appeared, yet voices of reporters buzzed like hornets, throwing questions. Before he even stepped on stage, he walked out the room, shifted, the tall heir of an empire standing not with his family at his side, but alone, his jaw tight, his eyes locked ahead. The crowd erupted at once, questions overlapping like thunder. Is it true your companion is a homeless girl? Is she after your inheritance? Are you prepared to lose your empire for her? Adrian raised one hand, and the hall fell into silence. Yes, he said, his voice low, but strong, every word carrying across the room. She lived in shelters. She slept in cold stations. She drew sketches while the world ignored her. And yes, I chose her, not because of money, not because of image, but because she is the only real thing I have ever known. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Flashes of cameras sparked brighter. He continued, stepping closer to the microphones. Strength is not born from wealth. It is born from survival. It is born from dignity. It is born from refusing to break, even when the world steps on you. That is who Lily is. And if this empire demands that I abandon her, then let it fall, because I will not. Behind the curtain, Lily pressed a hand to her mouth, tears burning her eyes, because no one had ever stood for her like that before. The press exploded into chaos, reporters shouting questions, family, allies storming toward the stage, trying to pull him back. But Adrian stood firm, a wall unmovable. One reporter dared to shout, So you are saying you would sacrifice your entire inheritance for her? Adrian smiled faintly and said, it is not a sacrifice, it is the first true choice of my life. Statements spread like wildfire screens, flashing the headline everywhere. The billionaire heir chooses love over legacy. Some voices mocked, some called him a fool, but thousands more whispered admiration, flooding social media with messages of support. For Lily, the girl who had nothing but captured everything. When Adrian stepped off stage, his father waited with cold fury, eyes sharp as knives. You will regret this. Adrian only brushed past him toward Lily, waiting in the shadow, her hands still shaking. He cupped her face and whispered, now the world knows. Now nothing can take you away from Maine. That moment, the chaos outside no longer mattered, because for the first time, Lily believed maybe, just maybe, this was not a contract anymore. It was something real. The hours after the press conference felt unreal. The city was buzzing like a hive, every channel, every feed replaying Adrian's words over and over. The heir who said he would give up everything for a girl from the streets. Some called it madness, some called it courage, but no one could ignore it. Lily sat in the corner of the mansion balcony, staring at the skyline, her sketchbook open, but her hand too unsteady to draw. She whispered to herself, why did he do this? Why risk it all for me? Her heart raced with fear, mixed with something she never dared hope for. Adrian came out quietly, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled. He looked tired, but lighter than she had ever seen. He leaned against the railing beside her and said, I know you are wondering if I meant it. Every word. She blinked quickly, her eyes wet. But the world is cruel. They will never let this rest. He shook his head. Let them talk. I am done living by their rules. She stared at him for a long moment. The man who once seemed like nothing more than a cold air, now standing bare in front of her, his walls gone. And slowly she reached out, touched his hand, unsure, but needing to feel he was real. He held her fingers firm, steady. Inside the mansion, chaos brewed. His father shouting into phones, investors threatening to pull out, his sister Victoria pacing with venom in her words, calling Lily a thief, a trap, a stain. But Adrian shut the doors to it all, focusing only on the girl in front of him. Later that night, staff whispered in hallways, the press camped outside the gates, and messages flooded. And some strangers called Lily an inspiration. Others hurled cruel insults, yet for the first time she felt shielded, not alone, because Adrian never left her side. Even when cameras flashed through the iron gates, he would step out, hand in hers, daring the world to keep watching. One evening they sneaked into the kitchen again, the same place they had shared awkward laughter before. This time it felt different. She poured tea, hands trembling slightly, and said, I do not know how to live in this storm. He looked at her softly and replied, then we live it together. No masks, no contracts, no lies. That night Lily opened her sketchbook for him for the first time, the pages filled with broken city corners, homeless shelters, bridges where she once slept, and faces of forgotten people. Adrian turned the pages slowly, each one hitting him deeper, until he finally looked at her and whispered, you survived all this, and you still create beauty. I think you are stronger than me. Her cheeks flushed, and for a moment silence filled the space, but it was not empty, it was safe. And in that silence a new bond settled, heavy and unshakable. Outside, the war with his family grew louder, but inside something else was beginning, something more powerful than all of it. The air inside the Whitford Estate ballroom felt heavier than ever before. Chandeliers glowed bright, and every polished surface reflected the cold glares of guests and family members. Adrian stood in the middle of the room, his suit pressed sharp, but his voice carried something raw, almost trembling, almost too real for a place built on wealth and silences. Father sat on a high-backed chair like a judge, his mother at his side, her lips pressed tight as if she had already written the verdict. Around them, cousins, aunts, investors, all eyes vultures, all waiting for him to bend and break. Adrian took a breath. He could feel his chest pounding like it wanted to escape. He could feel Mia's eyes on him across the hall, standing near the doorway. Her dress plain compared to the glittering gowns, but her presence brighter than anything else in that room raised his voice. My life is not a transaction. My future is not for sale. Gasps scattered across the hall. His uncle muttered, disgrace. His father slammed his hand against the armrest, his voice echoing, enough, Adrian. Enough, you will destroy everything this family has built. Adrian felt a rush of heat in his body. Anger, fear, love, all tangled. But he didn't stop. He looked at every face, every mask, and said, for years I played the role you wanted. I smiled when I hated. I bowed when I wanted to scream. But today, no more. Pointed toward Mia. She is the woman I love. She may not have wealth. She may not carry your perfect pedigree, but she carries something you have all forgotten: heart, courage, truth. Father stood towering over him. You will walk away from billions for this girl. A girl who was homeless on the streets. You think that is strength? Adrian's voice cracked, but it rose higher. Yes, because real strength is not built from marble floors or glass towers. It is built when someone survives nights with no roof, when someone fights hunger and still finds the will to dream. Mia has more strength than anyone in this room. Room fell into whispers. Investors frowning, relatives whispering scandal. Someone snapped a photo. Flashes cut across the hall like lightning. His mother finally spoke. Adrian, you are our only son. Do you understand what this means? If you walk away, the empire goes to your cousin. Your name will be dirt in every magazine. You will lose everything. Adrian's throat tightened. He thought about the mansion, the cars, the legacy, all of it stacked like bricks on his shoulders since he was born. Then he thought about late nights in the kitchen, laughing with Mia, her sketchbook filled with broken but beautiful dreams. The way she looked at him, like he was not an heir, but a man. He said quietly, almost gently, then let me lose everything because it means nothing without her. Mia stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her eyes steady. She whispered, Adrian, you don't have to do this for me. You have given up enough. Turned toward her, and for the first time in front of them all, he smiled. Real, unpolished, a little shaky. He said, I am not doing this for you, Mia. I am doing this with Yahweh's father. Shouted, guards, remove her. Now the guards hesitated, confused by the scene. Adrian raised his hand. Don't touch Hira. Silence, heavier than stone, filled the hall. Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the flashy kind. No diamonds splattered like ice. Just a simple ring. Silver, thin but strong. Dropped to one knee in front of Mia, right there in front of his family, the investors, the cameras, and asked, Mia Carter, will you marry me? Not for a contract, not for an inheritance, not for appearances, but because I cannot imagine a single tomorrow without Youth Hall. Froze. No one breathed. Mia's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but words failed. She nodded, her voice cracking. Yes. Adrian Yesh slipped the ring onto her finger. In the ballroom erupted chaos. Gasps, outrage, cameras clicking, people shouting disgrace, betrayal, insanity. But in that chaos, Adrian and Mia stood close, hands, locked, hearts steady. Two people against an empire yet stronger than they had ever been. Weeks later, the estate was no longer theirs. The company had slipped to greedy cousins. The empire Adrian was born to inherit, gone like smoke in the wind. But on a quiet morning, Adrian and Mia stood outside a small rented apartment, sunlight spilling over cracked bricks and peeling paint. He laughed softly, saying, funny how I never breathed so easy in any of those golden halls. Mia held his hand tighter, her sketchbook pressed to her chest. We may not have millions, Adrian, but we have mornings like this, and that feels richer than anything. Kissed her forehead, and for the first time in years, he felt free. No chains, no expectations, just love, raw and unpolished. Heir story spread across whispers and online screens. Some mocked, some admired, but for those who believed in love beyond wealth, it became a story of hope. And as the sun climbed higher, their journey truly began, not as billionaire and homeless girl, not as contract and compromise, but as two souls chose each other. Hello, dear friends, if you felt this story in your heart, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Soul Destinies Echo. Your one click means more than you know. Together, we can keep sharing these powerful stories. Thank you so much and see you in the next one.